Welcome to San Joaquin Spotlight, a public affairs program featuring conversations about life in the central San Joaquin Valley. This program is brought to you in partnership between KFSR 90.7 FM and CMAC Fresno. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Welcome to show 101 of San Joaquin Spotlight on television. Now, the radio version of San Joaquin Spotlight, I don't know, this is probably show 400, but I'm excited because this is show 101 and we're talking about Fresno Film Works with the president, Jefferson Beavers, and the youth outreach coordinator, Jasmine, Leiva. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Actually, you two have been on the program before. Jefferson, you've been this very studio in that very chair last year.
That's right. Yeah, I love what you've done with the place since I've been on.
Well, it's the volunteer crew and the CMAC team that does this. I just come and I ask questions, and you know, I've been blessed with a wonderful group of people around me. Jasmine, I remember you several years ago on the radio version of San Joaquin Spotlight.
Yeah, I was there for Fresno Unidos. So.
Yes, yes. What do you think?
Awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Hella upgrades.
Yeah, I feel like
yes, this is a very big upgrade to the
small
studio.
booth at
Yeah,
Fresno
totally.
State. Yeah.
Moving on up.
Yep.
But Fresno Film Works is what we're talking about here, and we talk about Fresno Film Works every year because around this time something happens. Jefferson, tell us about that.
Sure. Usually in the spring, Fresno Film Works hosts our annual Fresno Film Festival. Now this year, we moved that event to the fall. So our annual film festival will be November 13th through 15th at the historic Tower Theater, and we'll be celebrating our 11th year for that. So we hope you consider having us back on for that time. But right now we're on to talk a little bit about our monthly film series. And so for the past 14 years, FilmWorks has been showing first-run independent or international film on the second Friday of every single month at the Tower. And this month in June, coming up, we'll have an Argentine film called Wild Tales.
Talk about this Argentine film, Wild Tales.
Wild Tales is an Oscar nominee. It was one of 5 Oscar nominations for Best Foreign Language Film. And it's a story actually of 6 short films, kind of patchworked into one, and they're all on the theme of vengeance. And so this is kind of the story on vengeance.
That's
right.
A powerful word, vengeance.
Getting even.
Getting even.
And so this is kind of a story of uprisings, of people who kind of go to extremes to get even. And they kind of get more and more extreme as the shorts go along.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And are they made by the same person?
They are. I can never pronounce the director's name, Damian Cifron. Damian Cifron, he's a TV producer and screenwriter in Argentina, and this is, I think, his 3rd feature film. And the film is, again, like this patchwork of short films, and you don't usually get to see those kind of disjointed shorts put together. I think maybe American audiences might be most used to things like Tarantino movies, you know, in different chapters. This is kind of like that, but again with kind of the overlapping theme as you go along.
This year, you've brought Jasmine, and Jasmine, you've brought her onto the team at Fresno Film Works as the Youth Outreach Coordinator. Jasmine, why is your role so important?
Well, first of all, I'm really excited to be on the board, to be doing youth outreach. I think it's really important because I think that having that intergenerational audience just creates that community feel, and that's really part of the mission at FilmWorks. And I know that as a young person growing up in Fresno, when I came to my first movie at the Tower Theater, and I don't remember which one it was, but I've seen so many there, and the film festivals, being exposed to things that I otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to, like at the regular theater or just even in my everyday experiences. So, and I wrote about this when I first wrote my letter of intent and talking about, like I didn't grow up in the Tower District. So coming to the Tower at night, seeing the theater all lit up, going in, seeing the Art Deco, and just having that experience was so phenomenal. And then throughout the years, some titles that jump out at me, Waltz with Bashir, I remember that making such an impression.
Palestinian film.
Yeah, Palestinian film. that make you just really think. And I really believe in the power of film as a vehicle for change, just like any other art form. But I think that film is really accessible to so many people. And I think that young people are drawn to that. You know, it's the music, it's the cinematography, it's the art direction. I think that we get glimpses of that at the regular theater, but I think Film Works is such a great opportunity and outlet for that.
You know, I don't want to steer too far off of that topic, but I want to ask Jefferson about the Tower Theater itself. I mean, this place has been so welcoming, it sounds like, to Fresno Film Works because you've done a lot of things there. Talk a little bit more about the Tower Theater. It's this icon, it sounds like, in the community.
Sure, of course. Tower Theater actually recently celebrated its 75th anniversary this past fall. It started out, of course, as a movie theater and has had many incarnations over the years, primarily a performing arts space now. But it does have, you know, our films every month, and our film festival also has the Real Pride Gay and Lesbian Film Festival every fall as well. And as Jasmine was saying, it's a really great place to kind of tap into that like old-fashioned, you know, theater-going experience, cultural art experience, especially when you bring a young person into that space. You know, they're used to watching stuff on their iPad. You know, they pull the phone out of their pocket, and you know, there's tremendous power in that because there's accessibility and there's you know, kind of a do-it-yourself attitude, but there's a really different feel when you are in that kind of old-fashioned space, as Jasmine mentioned, that Art Deco kind of you know, space, and that changes the nature, I think, of the viewing experience. We just had a movie this past month, the music documentary, The Wrecking Crew. It was a story of these unsung musicians from the 60s and 70s, and the movie itself is, you know, a pretty standard music documentary, right? It's like, you know, the behind-the-scenes musicians, but when you see it in the theater and there's that kind of communal reaction together of people laughing, the good music, you know, it really changes the space. And, you know, we definitely want to bring young people into that space so that they can experience that with us.
Either of you, I mean, with technology has, the past 10 years, has been unbelievable. Unbelievable to making movies, unbelievable to showing movies, but young people, with the gadgets that they have, has it been more easier for them to make movies?
I think so, absolutely. I mean, I have a 17-year-old sister, and she's actually going to CART, and she's part of that design team. And I went over the other day, and she's like, I made my first animated movie, like film.
Nice.
And I mean, for me, like, obviously I'm an older sister, just like crying because it's so amazing. But working with youth too, I mean, I think that this is such an intuitive, like, user experience for them. They're already online, they're using social media, and for me, like, the power to tell their own stories is so amazing. So I do think that it's something that young people, if they have that interest, are already doing it, but even less so just in everyday storytelling. They're making their own content, I think.
I would agree, and to extend that thought a little bit, because they're using that media every day and they're interacting with it, it's part of their everyday experience, when you start to call it a film, then it becomes something a little bit different. It becomes that moment when they kind of take control of that story, you know, and those stories they're telling, and they put this idea in front of this idea, in front of this idea, and they really start to, you know, connect it in a way that's maybe more profound and more meaningful. Recently, Jasmine and I and a couple of the other board members participated in the Fresno Bees Student Film Festival. They're called the Scoopies.
I heard about that. How did that go?
It went very well. It was their second year of doing the Scoopies. The Fresno Bee is one of the FilmWorks' sponsors, and you know, we had an opportunity to watch, you know, about 45 entries for the cinematography category. And again, when students take that power and they start to think of it as a film, it really changes their everyday multimedia use. And you know, we really love that creativity. That can really, we think, you know, really help define communities when they start, you know, pushing it into that narrative area.
I felt that way. My sister, not only did she make it, but I saw her storyboarding. She had the paperwork. And it's like, you know, all the things that when you don't make movies that you don't know about, the fact that it's already becoming, you know, so accessible, and like not just the narrative, but like the tools, you know, the tools are more easily available, I think.
Well, and just doing this show here, San Joaquin Spotlight, I mean, the audience members watching and listening don't realize that there's a crew in the studio, there's a crew out here. I mean, just making it work is more than just coming and pressing record and interviewing guests. But one of the things that I'm excited about in the youth, and one of the things I got excited about in the FilmWorks bringing on someone like Jasmine, is there's a lot of youth out there that have all these great ideas and all these great animated characters and all these dreams. How is FilmWorks helping in that way? And it might be a tough question to answer, but either of you.
It's actually a pretty easy question for us because in the last year we have started a community outreach program. It's not just for youth, it can be for other groups as well, but we've primarily focused it on youth, where we want to bring out targeted groups each month in large numbers to see the movie for free. And with Jasmine coming on our board recently in the last few months, we pushed beyond our pilot projects in some local high schools. We've had kids from Sunnyside High's Video Production Academy, Central High's French Club, Edison High, like language arts courses. And these are large groups. They come out on the bus, and they're hanging out with us at the theater. And I think we've gotten some really good feedback from that. They're talking about the movies on their way back home, in the bus, and again, being in the space, seeing something they haven't usually used to seeing, that's really powerful.
Yeah, I think I know for Edison was the first school that I was on board for, and the movie was Kumiku. And I remember talking to
a Japanese film.
Yeah, a Japanese film. And I remember talking to some of the youth outside who'd come to the first showing, and one of them was like, I didn't even know movies could be like that. And that to me was exactly like the purpose of the youth outreach, is to really like just explode and expand that vision of what movies are and what film can be.
As both of you are talking, and all my experience with FilmWorks, and I've interviewed FilmWorks guests for years.
We're thankful for that, by the way.
And I'm thankful for that, because not only for the content, but you're educating me on a lot of the stuff. I mean, the Palestinian film, but even just in the past 5 minutes, you've mentioned Japanese film, French film. Diversity is what I think of when I think of FilmWorks. Do I have a correct grasp of that?
It's flattering, thank you. It's actually part of our mission that international film and multilingual film is a big component of our program. We try to have at least 50% of our programming in a year be multilingual, international, because you just don't get to see that at the mall in Fresno. You have Mad Max on 15 screens at 28 times, and you don't really have that opportunity to see people who are not like you, to hear ideas that are not like your own. And yeah, that's absolutely a focus. And we also try to encourage discussions as much as we can after the first screenings on the monthly series, because we want to have local scholars, we want to have filmmakers talk to our audience about some of those issues that they see in the films. And that's really a powerful component for us, we think.
Is there a misconception out there that when a movie doesn't sell in the box office, that movie is a horrible movie? I mean, here's why. Here's why I asked the question, because a lot of times the attention is on the movie that racks in millions the first week. On my drive to work every Monday, I hear about someone on radio talking about, oh, this movie brought in millions of dollars. So all of a sudden, the ones that rack in the millions are getting front level publicity. Does that make them good? I mean, are there good movies out there that maybe didn't do so well?
Well, sure. You want to?
I mean, I think you're asking somebody who's biased, because I'm actually drawn to ones that I call it the slow burn, where it picks up that word of mouth, and especially now with the internet, something that came out a couple years ago, suddenly, people are talking about it. Oh, it's on Netflix now. It's on these other available mediums, and I like that, sometimes reading through like a magazine or a blog, I'll see a title, and then when I wasn't on the board, I would see that FilmWorks was going to screen it. I was like, yes, so that connection to, kind of like the larger picture is really cool.
I agree. Your question also has a second dynamic to it that is, as you were mentioning, there's certain components that are invisible about your show. There are a lot of components that are invisible about the film industry, and that is it's controlled by multinational, international conglomerates. And so those movies that get more buzz, or they seem to get more buzz, those are actually just movies that have studios behind them that have more marketing dollars. And so the kinds of films that we show typically are on super small labels, or they're on indie boutique labels of the big ones. And they may not have the kind of national stature that Fast and the Furious 7 has, but they still have the same legitimacy, they still have the same storytelling power, and again, we just want to provide people to have a chance to see it. Whenever I hear that, like, oh, I heard that buzz 2
Yeah.
months ago, and then it came out in FilmWorks. That's one of our goals. That's one of the flattering things we want to hear.
So I love Jefferson because he says the things that I like don't speak. 'Cause I'm just like, duh.
flattery.
By the way,
But-
both of you flow well with each other. I've noticed in this interview
maybe
that
we should have a show.
yeah,
just
maybe you
saying.
should have
wow,
a film
CMAC.
works. Great idea. CMAC is here.
That's right.
Going back to the smaller budget films and the films by the person maybe who doesn't really know how to work the system. I mean, because
Sure.
this is a system, you know, I don't mean it in a negative way, but it is a system. There's a system to movie making and marketing. How do we help the small person who maybe doesn't have a budget but has this wonderful story that they can tell about,
Great question.
a lot of times about their own life?
Great question. Do you want to?
Do you want to go first?
Now that the
Sure.
softball is thrown.
Wow, that's it's a big question. It's a big question. I think there's several things you can do. On the small level, if you know someone who is interested in making a movie, you should encourage them. Any type of art making really should be encouraged. If you're going to give yourself to poetry, you're going to give yourself to filmmaking, you're going to give yourself to some kind of art, then bravo. People should support that. So on a small level, if you know somebody that's trying to make something, support them. At the box office, you can look for these kinds of smaller titles. You can push yourself out of your own boundaries to see films that are not going to be the everyday things that you would see. And I think just being aware too of kind of the machinery of it is something that I used to teach journalism at Fresno City College, and we talk a lot about media literacy, and it's a basic trait of media literacy to understand the machinery. So in a way, just understanding the machinery is almost like an act of defiance and an act of encouragement. There are avenues locally. Just like here at CMAC, there's Fresno Filmmakers Alliance. There's many other local production companies that do great work. And people who get involved in that should be encouraged.
Well, and so for the child, let's say, now shifting gears and talking
Sure.
about the child, for the child who has this dream of making a movie, whose parents are forcing them to go one route, when in actuality the child has this great idea.
Are you telegraphing your childhood right now?
Well, not my childhood.
Yeah.
It's not my childhood, but I know that there's a lot of people out there who have these great, whether it's art,
Sure.
whether it's story, or whether it's book writing, or
Sure.
whether it's a poem, who kind of are forced to go one direction. What do you say to the parents who have a child that says, "Mommy, Daddy, I want to make a movie," but the parents say, "No, you have to do this instead"?
Well, neither of us are parents, so I'm only speaking. We'll only be speaking philosophically on that. From our perspective, again, it's about bringing them into the space, and maybe they might not have the tools or the encouragement right at this moment to make something. Maybe the space they're in, like in high school, for example, they don't have the type of encouragement they need. But maybe if they see that. That idea or that storytelling opportunity on the screen, maybe that comes back to them later in life when they do have the access to that. And to me, I think that's kind of one of our goals, to have that little idea placed, that little seed placed.
I think thinking about my sister and my parents. Both my parents are immigrants. They came here and they just built everything from the bottom. But for my sister, saying, "You want to go to art school," right? Which I hear that too, I'm like, okay, but what are your backups? But
Right.
but I think really when I hear her talk about her passion and to also to think about animation, which is dominated by men, right? She says, "I really want to be a female animator, and I want to make characters of color, and I want to tell these stories." And I see that so much influenced by the story of my parents and their journey, And so I think that making the connection for parents about the art aspect, the art piece, it's definitely connected to the same dreams that our parents had of, giving their kids a better life. And it's not just I want to go and pursue this lofty ideal, but, connecting. And I think the community piece
So
is
true.
so important. With my sister, trying to find the other people in the city who are illustrators, who are passionate about similar things. And I think that a lot of times people try to write Fresno off as saying, there's nothing here, there's no
Yeah.
culture. And I think that if you really look, you made a joke, you were like, everyone knows Jasmine. But it's really because I've made the effort to
Sure.
seek out the things that interest me. And it's here. you know, and if it's not here, you can build it. You know, I have friends who've built music festivals in Fresno because that was their passion and that's what they wanted to see done. And so I think Fresno is unique in that it provides that platform for, like, if you want it, you can build it. Look at CMAC, it's here for it.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Talk about what we can expect in this next screening at Film Works.
Right, that is Wild Tales, the Argentine film. Again, Oscar nominee for Best Foreign Language Picture. It's in Spanish with English subtitles. It's kind of this kind of strange, wild ride about vengeance, getting even, told in kind of interconnected short stories. It's like short stories, but on the screen. And again, part of that international, independent bent that we have. You know, we're really looking forward to sharing that kind of film with Fresno.
As far as FilmWorks goes, how do you select what to air? Because I can imagine.
Always a question. It's always a question.
And I can imagine there's a ton of stuff coming into you or your organization. Going through it would be difficult because, you know, how do you know which one? I mean, there may be two that are just, you know, equally as awesome. I like that word, awesome. Two equally as awesome. But how do you select which gets played, and how do you know what to save for next time?
Sure. Newbie, do you want to, or you?
It was definitely like when I joined the board, it's like the curtain in The Wizard of Oz, like the curtain being drawn back of like the process.
That's amazing.
What I really like about the choices is that it's people driven, and the board nominates films. There's a lot of like nuance to that
Sure.
that Jefferson can explain very well. But then as the board, we vote on it, and
Yeah.
you know,
It's democratic to a
Yeah.
fault. Each board member has potentially one nomination, and then they have one vote. And so we read reviews, we look at distributor websites, we see what's out there, we hear what's getting the buzz, and then we make our pitch. And if the film is available, there's all sorts of technical factors, format, timing, things like that. But if the film's available, then we vote on them. And every month we have anywhere from 4 to 6 films to choose from. And you know, we rank them, and you go from the top. So you're right. Any given month, we have like a really great selection that we get, and then there's 3 or 4 others that didn't get picked. And you know, it's good for us because we get to put them into our Netflix queue.
Yeah.
We know they're coming later. But yeah, it's a bit of a flip of the coin. It's a little bit of a miracle every month, actually. But in the end, it provides, I think, a lot of diversity. We have 16 very different people on the board. With very different tastes, very different aesthetics, but the number one goal always comes back to independent, international, and really like community building.
Talk about when these things occur. I mean, are they on Saturday night, Friday night, Sunday night, Monday night? When are they typically?
Our screenings, they're
Yes.
on the second Friday of every month at the Tower Theater. People always say, well, when's your movie? It's always second Friday of every month. You can star your calendar accordingly. And then, of course, we have our big Fresno Film Festival. It's a 3-day deal, November 13th through 15th on the second weekend in November. So you can plan your social calendar around second Friday
So,
every month.
second Friday, I have that memorized.
Yeah,
second
second
Friday of
Friday.
Good
every
work.
month.
And if you drive through Tower, you'll see it on the marquee.
Yep.
So
Up in the big lights.
Is there a cost to attend both, either the second Friday, again, I plugged it, second Friday,
Good work.
or the 3-day film festival?
Our monthly screenings are $10 general admission, $8 students and seniors. It's been the same ticket price for years and years. You can buy tickets in advance on our website, fresnofilmworks.org, or you can go down to the Tower Theater box office and buy the old-fashioned way. We don't quite have the festival passes set yet for the fall, but they're usually around 40 or 50 bucks, and it gets you access to all 7 or 8 programs throughout the weekend.
Why should people want to come and pay that amount and see the movie? If I'm on the fence, So it's the second Friday of the month. Again, see that? Second Friday
Good
of the
work.
month. Second
You're hired.
Thank you. We'll talk about details after. No, I'm just kidding. Second Friday of the month, and I'm debating whether to go to the Film Works screening or I'm debating whether to go do some other entertainment. Why should I come to the Film Works?
Take
Well,
that.
so when I joined the board, I was like, I want you to know that your screenings made my like top Fresno dates like list, and I think because it's a special experience, I think that you could go get dinner and go see a movie at like Edwards or another theater, but I think that you kind of get that specialness of the theater of running into people in your community. I see that a lot as a board member now in the lobby, running into people you know. And also, like, you have like the tower and the restaurants and get a drink afterwards or before. But I think it just makes you feel really like a part of something bigger and a part of your city. I think for some people, especially young people who are looking for a little bit of that urban feel, it feels really nice. Especially, I like walkable things. So being able to walk around maybe and then go see a theater. I think it's not just the movie, it's like the whole experience.
And it sounds like based on the diversity that people not only go and, watch these great films, but they're educated on things, and I think that's an important piece too.
We try to have a little fun. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I don't want to see that drama or that like heavy film on a Friday night, after your long work week." But I mean, pretty much without fail, even before I was on the board, just as a fan, as an audience member, there's always something to take from a FilmWorks movie. We try really hard to make them lasting, the picks to be lasting. And so even if it's not your style, you kind of push out of that comfort zone a little bit, and you will be rewarded. You'll be rewarded.
Fresno Film Works film was the first one where I was ever in the audience that people were like cheering and heckling and cheering. I think it was like the
Nice.
U.S. versus John Lennon. Like, it
Oh,
was, like,
nice.
huge
That old
audience.
documentary, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of cool too.
Well, you two, we're out of time. I would love to have you for another hour because I could just keep asking you questions.
Thank you.
But thank you so much for coming on the program
Thank you
this
for
week
having
and
us on.
educating our audience members.
Thanks very much, Sevag.
That's all for this edition of San Joaquin Spotlight. Our guests this week have been Jefferson Beavers, he's the president, and Jasmine Leiva, she is the youth outreach coordinator. I practiced that one. Youth outreach coordinator of Fresno Film Works. They were here talking about the great things happening with Fresno Film Works. Thank you to the volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you to our audience members listening to this on KFSR 90.7 FM and to those watching on CMAC, Comcast, and AT&T. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. Tune in next week to a new edition.